The Mafia boss was tied near train tracks until a poor single mom and her child saved him. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Emma Peterson adjusted her worn jacket, the fabric rough against her skin as she walked down the cold, empty street. Her hands trembled slightly, not from the chill in the air, but from the weight of the day that had just ended. Her second job at the cafe was over, and now she had only one thing on her mind: getting home to her son. The exhaustion weighed heavily on her, but she pushed it down, just like she had done every night for the past year. The streetlights flickered above her, casting a dim glow on the cracked pavement below. Emma moved quickly, her footsteps echoing in the silence of the street. She turned the corner, passing by the old train tracks that ran through her neighborhood. It was quiet tonight, but there was something about the stillness that made her uneasy. She picked up her pace, eager to get home. That's when she saw him. A man, tied to the tracks, his body slumped in the dark. Emma froze. Her breath caught in her throat as her eyes adjusted to the shadows. The man was big, his clothes expensive but torn, and he looked almost lifeless. Her first instinct was to run, to turn around and get as far away as possible. But something in her gut told her she couldn't. She couldn't leave him there. With trembling hands, she stepped closer, her heart racing. Was he dead? She knelt down beside him, her breath shallow. The train tracks lay just a few feet away, and the sound of an approaching train rumbled in the distance. Panic surged through her. She had no time to waste. "Hey," she called out, her voice cracking in the cold night air. "Are you alive?" There was a faint groan, and Emma's heart skipped. A beat. He was alive. Barely. She didn't know who he was, but she couldn't leave him to die. With all the strength she could muster, she grabbed the ropes that bound him, pulling and tugging until they gave way. Her hands bled from the friction, but she didn't care. She had to save him. The man stirred slightly, his eyes flickering open just as the train's headlights appeared in the distance. "We have to move now," Emma screamed, pulling him up with all her might. His body was limp, but she kept dragging him forward. The train was almost upon them, its whistle deafening in her ears. Just as the train neared, Emma managed to get him off the tracks, throwing herself and the man to the ground, narrowly avoiding the speeding train as it passed. They lay there, panting, the rush of adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She didn't know how long they stayed there, both of them gasping for air. Finally, the man spoke, his voice low and hoarse. "You saved me," he said, his eyes locking onto hers with a strange intensity. Emma didn't know what to say. She had just saved a stranger, a man who might have been someone dangerous. But in that moment, she didn't care. She had done what was right. "You're welcome," she muttered, trying to catch her breath. The man looked at her for a long moment, as though weighing something in his mind. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone. "You should be careful," he said softly. "There are people who won't be happy that you helped me." Emma stared at him, confused, but something in his gaze told her she had just crossed into a world she didn't understand. The Mafia world. And she had no idea what she had just gotten herself into. Emma's hands were still shaking when she looked at the man lying next to her on the cold ground. The train's roar had faded into the distance, but the adrenaline was still coursing through her body. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, and she struggled to catch her breath. The man, who, for some reason, she had just risked her life to save, was silent beside her, his eyes closed as though he was still gathering himself. The cold night air bit at her skin, but Emma barely noticed. Her focus was on the stranger beside her. She had just pulled him from certain death, and yet, something about him made her uneasy. She had done the right thing, she reminded herself, but something deep inside her told her that helping him would come with consequences she couldn't yet understand. She stood up slowly, still feeling the ache in her muscles, and offered her hand to him. His dark eyes opened as he reached out to take it, his grip firm but careful. He wasn't weak, but he was disoriented. "Thank you," he said, his voice low, hoarse from the near-death experience. "You saved my life." Emma gave a small nod, unsure of what to say. You're welcome, she replied quietly, feeling a strange mix of pride and fear. She hadn't expected to feel this way. She had acted on instinct, on the belief that anyone, no matter who they were, deserved to be saved from death. But now that the danger had passed, the reality of what she had just done was sinking in. The man looked at her for a moment, his gaze intense, as though sizing her up. He was tall, his dark suit slightly disheveled from the struggle, and his face was sharp, with a certain coldness in his eyes that made her shiver. Despite the strange warmth that seemed to radiate from him, there was something about him that felt dangerous. He didn't look like the type of person who would normally be in her life. He looked too polished, too powerful. You shouldn't have helped me, he said, his voice steady, yet filled with an unspoken warning. Emma frowned, confused by his words. Why not? You were about to die. I couldn't just walk away. His lips quirked slightly, a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. I'm not sure you understand who I am. People like me, people who have enemies, don't get saved by strangers. And I'm not sure what you just did is going to go unnoticed. Emma took a step back, instinctively feeling her pulse quicken. What do you mean? She asked, her voice shaky now. The man didn't immediately answer, but instead, he looked around them as if to assess their surroundings. My name is Vincent Moretti, he said, finally looking her way again. I run a business that isn't exactly legal. And now, because you decided to save me, there are people who will want to know why. Emma felt a chill run down her spine as his words sank in. She had no idea who this man was or what he did, but the way he spoke made her realize he was no ordinary person. She had just gotten involved in something much bigger than herself. She thought of her son, how she'd promised him she would always keep him safe, and the sudden weight of responsibility threatened to crush her. I'm not involved in anything illegal, she said quickly, shaking her head. I didn't do this for any other reason than to help. I couldn't just leave you there. Vincent regarded her for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether or not to believe her. His gaze softened slightly, but there was still an edge to it. I know, he said, and for that, I'll make sure no one comes after you. But you need to stay away from me. You don't know what you're stepping into. He paused, and Emma could see the hesitation in his eyes. But, he added, if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to call me. You'll have my protection, whether you like it or not. Emma's mind raced. Protection? From what? From who? The last thing she wanted was to be dragged into his world, a world she didn't understand. But the strange sense of duty she felt, towards him, and now towards herself, made her question what she was about to do next. Was it too late to walk away? Was she already in too deep? She nodded slowly, the uncertainty clear in her eyes. I don't know what you're talking about, but thank you. Vincent gave her a single nod, then turned, his figure disappearing into the shadows as quickly as he had appeared. Emma stood there for a moment, staring at the empty street, her mind spinning with questions. She had just saved a Mafia boss, and she didn't even know why. The night felt colder now, as if the weight of what had happened had finally caught up with her. Emma had barely slept that night, her mind racing, didn't understand. She couldn't shake the feeling of his eyes on her, even after he disappeared into the shadows. His words echoed in her head. You'll have my protection, whether you like it or not. She didn't know what to make of it, but a part of her felt uneasy, even afraid. She had done something she never thought she would, but there was no turning back now. As she got dressed for the day, Emma glanced at the small photo of her son on the nightstand. She had always promised herself that she would do anything to protect him. But now, with everything changing, she wasn't so sure anymore. She left the apartment quickly, her shoes clicking against the cold pavement as she walked towards the bus stop. She needed to get to work, to focus on something other than the growing uncertainty. But as she waited for the bus, her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was an unknown number. A quick glance at the screen sent a shiver down her spine. It was Vincent. She hesitated for a moment before answering. Hello. Her voice felt shaky, unsure of what to expect. Emma, Vincent's voice came through the phone, calm and controlled as always. I trust you're doing well after last night. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She didn't know what to say. I'm fine, she replied cautiously. Good, Vincent said, his tone shifting slightly, as if he was thinking through something. Listen, I've arranged for you to get what you need. I know you're struggling. Your son needs help. Consider it an offer you can't refuse. Emma's grip tightened on the phone. What do you mean by that? She asked, her mind already racing with possibilities. "I've already taken care of it," Vincent said. "You'll find the funds you need in your bank account by the end of the day. It's the least I can do for saving my life." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She didn't know what kind of person Vincent was, but this wasn't something she could ignore. "I don't want anything from you," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I don't need your help." Vincent's voice softened, but there was an edge to it. "Emma, don't be foolish. You don't have to accept, but I'm offering it anyway. I'm trying to make this right, for both of us." His words hung in the air, and Emma felt her chest tighten. She had no idea what she was dealing with. But Vincent wasn't going to let her refuse. "Think about it," he continued. "I'll be in touch." The line went silent, and Emma stood there, her heart racing in her chest. She couldn't deny the strange pull she felt toward Vincent. There was something about him that made her want to trust him, even though every warning bell inside her screamed not to. The bus arrived, and Emma stepped on, her mind still reeling. As she took her seat, she couldn't help but wonder, what have I gotten myself into? But she couldn't turn back now. Not after everything. Not after saving him. She had already stepped into a world she didn't understand, and now she would have to live with the consequences. She glanced out the window, watching the city pass by, trying to block out the thoughts swirling in her head. But there was no escaping it. The Mafia world, Vincent, and the dangerous game that had only just begun. Emma arrived home late that evening, her thoughts swirling in 1,000 directions. The day had been long, and she was exhausted from the constant battle to keep her life together. The small apartment she shared with her son was quiet, the only sounds coming from the hum of the refrigerator and the soft tick of the wall clock. She kicked off her shoes and walked to the kitchen, her mind still replaying her conversation with Vincent earlier. The funds had already appeared in her bank account. She had checked twice, trying to find some explanation for how it had happened. But no matter how many times she looked, the money was there. It was more than enough to cover her son's medical bills for the next few months. More than enough to make her feel like she could breathe again. She didn't know what to think. She didn't know who Vincent was or what he wanted from her. But she had the unsettling feeling that this was only the beginning. As she opened the fridge and pulled out a carton of milk, she heard a noise from the other room. Her son, Jake, had just come in from playing outside. He was 7 years old, his bright eyes always full of questions and wonder. His small frame darted into the kitchen, his sneakers squeaking against the floor. "Mom, you're home," he said with a grin, his face lighting up as he ran to hug her. Emma smiled, lifting him up into her arms. "I'm home, buddy," she said, kissing the top of his head. For a moment, everything felt normal. Everything felt safe. But deep down, Emma knew that the sense of safety was fleeting. The world around her had shifted. She wasn't sure what was happening, but it felt like the calm before a storm. That night, after putting Jake to bed, Emma sat at the small table in the living room, staring at her phone. The message from Vincent was still there, sitting in her inbox. She had kept it, even though she didn't know why. "You'll have my protection, whether you like it or not." She thought back to the look in his eyes the night he had almost died, the way he had sized her up as though he could read her like an open book. There had been something about him that made her uneasy, but also something that made her feel like she had to trust him. She had saved him, but what did he want in return? The phone buzzed again, this time with a new message from an unknown number. She hesitated for a moment, then opened it. "I'm sending someone to check on you," the message read. "Stay safe. Don't talk to anyone about what happened." Emma's stomach twisted in knots. She knew she had just crossed into a world she didn't understand, a world she didn't want to be part of. She had helped the Mafia boss, and now she had no choice but to wait for whatever would come next. The next day, she didn't hear from Vincent again, but she couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching her. Every phone call, every knock on the door, made her heart race. She couldn't escape the feeling that she was being hunted. As the days passed, Emma tried to go about her life as usual. She took care of her son, went to work, and tried to ignore the creeping fear that seemed to follow her everywhere. But no matter what she did, she couldn't shake the sense of being trapped. She had saved Vincent, and now, whether she wanted to or not, she was part of his world, and there was no going back. One evening, just as she was about to head out to pick up Jake from school, her phone rang. It was Vincent. She didn't know what to expect, but she answered the call. "Emma." His voice came through the speaker, calm as ever. "I need to see you." She felt her heart drop. "Why?" she asked, her voice shaky. There are things we need to discuss. I'll send a car to pick you up. Before she could respond, the line went dead. She stared at the phone, the weight of his words sinking in. She had no idea what Vincent wanted from her, but she was about to find out. She had no choice now. It was too late to walk away. Emma stood in her living room, staring at the phone, the sound of Vincent's voice still echoing in her mind. I need to see you. The words sent a chill down her spine. She had never been in a situation like this before, never imagined her life would take such a strange and dangerous turn. A part of her wanted to ignore the call, to hang up and pretend like she hadn't heard it, but she knew deep down that was impossible. Once he got involved in someone like Vincent Moretti's world, there was no turning back. The car would be coming for her. She had no choice but to meet him. Her son was at school, and for a brief moment, she wondered if she should just pack up and leave. But where would she go? What would she do? She couldn't drag her son into something that was clearly dangerous, but there were no easy answers. She couldn't run from this world, not after everything she had done. She looked around the room, trying to gather her thoughts. Her apartment was small, the furniture old, but it was hers. It was the only thing she had managed to hold on to after everything that had happened. The phone buzzed again, snapping her out of her thoughts. A text message from an unknown number popped up on the screen. Asterisk, the car will be there in 10 minutes. Be ready. Asterisk. Emma took a deep breath, her mind racing as she quickly grabbed her coat and bag. She glanced at the clock. It was almost time to pick up Jake from school. But she couldn't risk being late. She couldn't let Vincent see her weakness. She stepped out of her apartment and made her way down the stairs, trying to steady her nerves. The street outside was quieter than usual, the chill in the air making her feel even more isolated. She pulled her coat tighter around her as she reached the corner, her footsteps echoing in the empty street. A sleek black car pulled up just as she arrived. The tinted windows made it impossible to see who was inside, but she didn't need to ask. She knew this was Vincent's doing. The door opened before she could reach it, and a man in a suit stepped out. He was tall and imposing, with a face that could have belonged to anyone in Vincent's world, cold, unreadable, and a little too perfect. He didn't say a word as he held the door open for her. Emma hesitated for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest, but then she climbed in, the door closing silently behind her. The car's interior was dimly lit, the leather seats cool under her hands. The man didn't sit beside her, but instead slid into the front passenger seat. Emma felt a tight knot form in her stomach as the car pulled away from the curb. The ride was silent, the only sound being the low hum of the engine and the occasional hum of the tires against the asphalt. She tried to steady her breathing, but the air felt thick with tension. Her mind kept returning to Vincent's words. You'll have my protection, but what did that even mean? Was she a part of this world now? Would she ever be able to escape? She tried to shake off the fear, focusing instead on her son. She needed to get back to him. She couldn't let anything happen to him. The car took a sharp turn, and Emma's thoughts were interrupted as they pulled into a gated driveway. The gates were tall and imposing, the kind of gates that you saw in movies about rich, dangerous people. The car slowed as it approached the mansion at the end of the drive, and Emma felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The mansion was massive, its dark exterior barely visible in the fading light of the evening. The security lights illuminated the area, casting long shadows over the manicured lawn. As they stopped in front of the entrance, the driver opened the door for her. Emma stepped out, her heart hammering in her chest. She had no idea what to expect next, but she knew it wasn't going to be easy. A man in a dark suit was standing at the door, waiting for her. He didn't smile as he opened the door, his expression stoic and serious. Mr. Moretti is waiting for you, he said, his voice low and unyielding. Emma nodded, her throat dry as she followed him inside. The interior of the mansion was just as grand as the exterior, the high ceilings, the marble floors, and the carefully placed furniture all exuding a sense of power and wealth. As they walked down the long corridor, Emma's mind raced. She had no idea what Vincent wanted from her, but she was about to find out. The man led her to a large room at the back of the house, where Vincent was standing by the window, looking out at the darkened horizon. His posture was confident, almost regal, and for the first time, Emma could see the full extent of his presence. There was no mistaking it now. He was someone who commanded respect, someone who could make people do things without saying a word. He turned as she entered, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Emma," he said softly, his voice carrying a weight that felt almost suffocating. "I'm glad you could make it." Vincent stood by the window, his gaze fixed on the dark sky beyond the mansion's expansive grounds. Emma felt a slight tremor run through her as she watched him, wondering what was going through his mind. She had never imagined her life would lead her here, to this grand house, standing in front of a man who seemed to control everything around him. She had saved him, yes, but what did that really mean now? She took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing thoughts, but her heart was still pounding in her chest. The silence between them stretched on, thick and heavy. Finally, Vincent spoke, his voice breaking the quiet. "I know this isn't what you expected, Emma," he said, his tone steady but with a hint of something deeper. "But you've done more for me than you realize." She felt a knot tighten in her stomach at his words. "I didn't do it for anything in return," she replied quickly, her voice more forceful than she intended. "I just couldn't let you die." Vincent turned, his eyes meeting hers, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of something that wasn't so controlled, something almost human. "I know," he said, his voice softer now, "but you've saved my life, and that means something. It's not just about me, it's about you too." Emma's mind spun. She hadn't asked for any of this. She just wanted to live her life, to protect her son, and now she was tangled up in the world of people like him. Dangerous people. "I don't understand what you want from me," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I didn't ask for any of this." Vincent stepped closer, his presence overwhelming in a way that made her feel small, yet oddly safe at the same time. "I don't expect you to understand," he said, his voice low and purposeful. "But I'm giving you a choice. A chance to leave this world behind if you want. But, if you stay, you'll have my protection. I'll make sure you and your son are safe. And that's not something I offer to just anyone." Emma's heart skipped a beat. Protection? Was that all he wanted? "Why me?" she asked, shaking her head in confusion. "Why are you offering this to me?" Vincent paused for a moment, and Emma could feel the weight of his gaze on her. "Because you saved my life," he said simply. "And because you're strong, Emma. You don't even realize it yet, but you are. You've been through more than most people, and you're still standing." His words hit her harder than she expected. She had always felt like she was just getting by, barely holding it together. She didn't feel strong. But maybe, just maybe, he was right. The room felt colder now, the weight of Vincent's words settling on her shoulders. She didn't know what to make of all this. The life she had known was slipping away, and she wasn't sure she could ever go back to how things were before. But what choice did she have? "I can't stay in this world," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't belong here. I'm just a single mom trying to take care of her son." Vincent looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "No one belongs here at first," he said. "But this is the reality now. And you'll adapt, just like everyone else who enters this world." Emma felt her chest tighten, but she didn't say anything. She wasn't sure if she could ever accept this world, but she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't let Vincent down. She couldn't turn her back on the life she had saved. "What do you want me to do?" she asked, her voice steady now, though she still felt like she was walking through a fog. Vincent's gaze softened. "Just know that you're not alone, Emma," he said quietly. "I'll be here, and so will my people. If you need anything, anything at all, don't hesitate to ask." Emma nodded, though she wasn't sure she fully understood what that meant. She still didn't know what kind of world she had stepped into, but for now, she had no choice but to take the hand that Vincent was offering. She had already made one life-changing decision when she saved him. This would be the second. She only hoped she wasn't making a mistake. Emma didn't know what to expect when she walked into Vincent's office the next morning. The mansion had felt like a different world, one she wasn't ready to be a part of. But now, standing in front of his sleek, dark wood desk, with the faint scent of expensive cologne in the air, she felt completely out of place. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I'm glad you could make it," Vincent said, his voice smooth and reassuring, though his eyes still carried that intense focus she had come to expect. He was standing by the window, his posture strong, almost regal. She nodded, trying to push down the nervousness crawling up her spine. She had agreed to meet him, but she wasn't sure if she was ready to accept whatever he had planned for her. "I don't know what you want from me," Emma said, her voice a little more confident than she felt. I'm just here because you asked me to come. Vincent turned from the window and looked at her, a small smile tugging at his lips. It's not about what I want from you, Emma, he said. It's about what I'm offering. Protection, stability, safety. You don't have to worry anymore. You've already done something I can never repay. Emma frowned, trying to understand his words. She had saved his life. Yes, but this felt like something much bigger than that. I'm not interested in being part of your world, she said, her voice firm. I just want to take care of my son and keep my life simple. Vincent's smile faded, but his gaze softened. I understand, he said, walking slowly toward her. But you're already part of it, whether you like it or not. You've made a choice, Emma, and now you have a place here. The way he said it made her chest tighten. She had never wanted anything like this. She had no desire to get tangled in Vincent's world, but the reality was, she was already in too deep. I don't want to owe you anything, she said, her words coming out more quietly than she had intended. You don't owe me anything, Vincent replied, his voice calm. But I'm offering you something you need. Something that will change everything for you and your son. Emma hesitated. She didn't know what he was talking about, but the way he spoke made it feel like she had no choice but to listen. What exactly are you offering me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Vincent stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. I'm offering you a chance to build something better. A future that's secure. I've arranged for your son to receive the best education, the best care. And I'll make sure no one can touch you, Emma. No one will ever hurt you again. Emma's heart raced. She hadn't asked for any of this. All she had wanted was to stay safe, to protect her son. But now, with Vincent's words hanging in the air, she was starting to understand that things weren't as simple as she thought. I don't know if I can accept this, she said, shaking her head. I don't belong in your world. Vincent paused, his eyes locking onto hers with a steady, unwavering gaze. You don't have to belong in my world, Emma, he said softly. But my world will always be there for you when you need it. And as long as you're under my protection, you will always have a place. Emma felt a lump form in her throat. She didn't want to admit it, but she knew she was already caught in this web. She didn't have the luxury of walking away anymore. She looked down at her hands, unsure of what to say next. I don't know what to do, she whispered. Vincent reached out, gently tilting her chin up so their eyes met again. I'm not asking you to make any decisions right now, he said. I'm just offering you a choice. You can stay with your son, and you can keep living the way you are. Or, you can let me help you. You don't have to decide everything at once. Emma's mind was spinning. She didn't know what was right, what she should do. But in that moment, she knew she was standing at a crossroads, and whatever decision she made would change everything. She had already crossed a line by saving Vincent's life. Now, the next step was up to her. She took a deep breath and nodded, unsure of what to say, but knowing she had no choice but to keep moving forward. I'll think about it, she said softly. Vincent gave her a nod, his expression unreadable. Take your time, he said. But remember, you're not alone in this. I'm here. Emma turned away, her mind still in turmoil. She didn't know what the future held, but she was certain of one thing. Her life would never be the same again. Emma left the mansion with her thoughts tangled and her heart heavy, the night air cool against her face as the car took her back to the small life she had always known. The city lights blurred past the window, and for the first time in years, she felt suspended between two worlds, neither of them fully hers. When she got home, Jake was already asleep, his backpack resting by the door, his favorite sneakers kicked off carelessly near the couch. She stood there for a long moment, watching him breathe, steady and peaceful, and she reminded herself why she had survived every hard day until now. Everything she did was for him. The next few days passed quietly, almost too quietly. Emma went to work, picked Jake up from school, cooked simple dinners, and tried to convince herself that nothing had changed. But it had. She felt it in the way unfamiliar cars slowed near her building, and in the way her phone stayed charged at all times. Vincent did not call, did not text, and somehow that made her more uneasy than his presence ever had. On the fourth day, the silence broke. Emma was walking Jake home from school when she noticed a man standing across the street, pretending to look at his phone while clearly watching them. Her steps slowed, and her grip on Jake's hand tightened. Before fear could take hold, a black sedan pulled up smoothly, and the man across the street immediately turned away and left. The sedan did not stop. It simply passed by, unhurried, controlled. Emma knew without being told. That night, her phone buzzed with a single message. "You are safe." She did not reply. Instead, she sat at the kitchen table long after Jake had gone to bed, staring at the screen and realizing something she had been avoiding. Vincent was not trying to trap her. He was keeping his word. A week later, Emma received a call from Jake's school. They told her he had been selected for a special academic program, one with resources she had never been able to afford. She thanked them politely, hung up, and sat down hard on the couch. It was happening again. Quiet help. No demands. No pressure. That evening, Vincent called for the first time since their meeting. His voice was calm, familiar now. "I told you I would protect what matters to you," he said. Emma closed her eyes. "I did not agree to this," she replied softly. "I know," Vincent answered. "That is why it matters." She wanted to argue, to tell him to stop interfering, but the words would not come. Instead, she asked the question that had been building inside her. "Why are you doing all this without asking for anything back?" There was a pause on the line, longer than usual. "Because someone once saved me when they had nothing to gain," Vincent said. "And because I do not want my world to touch yours unless you invite it." That night, Emma realized the truth she had been resisting. Vincent was changing. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deliberately. The man who had once been bound to train tracks, abandoned by his own enemies, was choosing restraint where he once would have chosen control. Days turned into weeks, and Emma began to feel something unfamiliar. Stability. Not comfort, not luxury, but the quiet certainty that tomorrow would not break her. Vincent remained in the background, a presence she felt more than saw, and somehow that made all the difference. One evening, as Emma tucked Jake into bed, he looked up at her and asked, "Mom, are we safe now?" She brushed his hair back gently and smiled. "Yes," she said, "we are." And for the first time, she believed it. Somewhere across the city, Vincent stood alone by a window, watching the lights below, knowing that power had never felt like this before. He had ruled through fear for most of his life, but now, for the first time, he was learning something far more dangerous. How to protect without owning, how to give without taking, and how redemption did not come from force, but from choice. Emma sat at the small kitchen table, the faint glow of the evening sun casting a warm hue across the room. It had been months since she first met Vincent Moretti, months since her life took a sharp turn into a world she never imagined she would be part of. She had been reluctant at first, unsure of the man who saved her life and offered her protection. But now, looking back at everything that had happened, she couldn't deny the peace she felt. She had fought for her son's future, and she had fought for a sense of normalcy. But with Vincent's help, normal wasn't what she had anymore. It was something far different, something she couldn't fully grasp. The phone on the table buzzed, breaking her thoughts. She picked it up, seeing a message from Vincent. "Asterisk, I need to see you. There's something important to discuss." Asterisk, her heart skipped a beat. He hadn't called for a few weeks. She thought things had settled, that their arrangement was something of a distant memory. But Vincent's messages always carried weight, always felt urgent. She hesitated for a moment, looking over at Jake, who was playing in the next room. "I'll be back soon," she whispered to herself, as though trying to convince her heart to calm down. She had been avoiding this moment for weeks, but now, she couldn't put it off anymore. The car arrived promptly, the same black sedan she had seen the first time. The driver didn't say a word as she climbed into the back, the door shutting softly behind her. The ride was familiar, yet something about it felt different. The car was quiet, the only sound being the hum of the engine and the soft tapping of the rain on the windows. When they arrived at Vincent's mansion, the gates opened as if they had been expecting her. The grandeur of the estate had lost its intimidation over time, but tonight, it felt colder, as if the house itself was holding its breath. The door opened before she could knock, and she was led inside by one of Vincent's men. The moment she stepped into the mansion, the stillness hit her. The air was thick with an unspoken tension. She followed the man down the familiar hallway and into the study, where Vincent stood by the window, looking out at the darkened grounds. His expression was unreadable, but she could feel the weight of his thoughts. "You've been avoiding me," he said, his voice calm but edged with something that made her pulse quicken. "I've been trying to keep things normal," Emma replied, her voice steady despite the nerves bubbling beneath the surface. "Normal is an illusion," Vincent said, turning to face her. You know that, Emma. You've been in this world long enough now to understand that. She swallowed hard, unsure of where this conversation was headed. She wasn't ready to admit how much she had already accepted the changes in her life. What is it you wanted to talk about? She asked, her voice betraying a hint of uncertainty. Vincent took a step closer, his gaze unwavering. I've been watching you, he said, his words slow, deliberate. And I see the strength in you that you don't even recognize. Emma flinched, not sure if she should feel flattered or afraid. I'm just trying to do what's best for my son, she replied quietly. That's why I'm offering you something, Emma, Vincent said, his voice softer now. I want to make sure you and Jake never have to worry again. I've made arrangements, more than just the financial support. I want you to have the chance to build something real, something that can't be taken away. Emma's heart raced. She had heard his offers before, but something in his tone told her this wasn't just about money. It was something deeper, something more dangerous. What do you mean? She asked, trying to read him. Vincent stepped even closer, his presence overwhelming yet oddly comforting. I'm offering you the chance to leave this life behind, he said, his voice steady. But you have to accept it. You have to trust me. Emma felt her breath catch. Trust you? She whispered, the weight of his words sinking in. Yes, he said simply. You've already trusted me once. And I won't let you down again. The silence between them stretched, and for the first time, Emma realized how much her life had changed. She had never asked for this, never wanted to be part of his world. But now, standing in front of him, she couldn't deny the pull. She was in this whether she liked it or not. I don't know if I can ever really trust you, she said, her voice trembling. But I'll do whatever it takes to protect Jake. Vincent's expression softened, and for a moment, Emma saw something that wasn't just power or control. It was understanding. That's all I need to hear, he said quietly. And from now on, we do this together.